Hello everybody, hope you're well. Welcome in this lesson number 5 about motion graphics with Blender, and today we're gonna be talking about animation mainly. Before starting, please can you confirm that the audio today is good, that the volume is loud enough? Yesterday we had some problem, so the last lessons wasn't really the best quality wise. The audio was very low apparently, so I should have fixed it now. So I just want you to confirm or tell me if it's bad today too. Okay, cool. So unless someone has problem with the audio, I will start. Good, very well. So before starting with the first step in animation, yesterday we've seen some import of SVG files, we've seen some material editing. We will go through that quickly again, mainly because I want to show you a problem that you actually may have experienced while importing an SVG. Sometimes the SVG file format may have not been designed in the best way. So let's say that we imported now this object. Let's scale it. No, not this one. My bad. Start again. Sorry, guys. Let's remove everything and let's import an SVG with issues like this one. So it's too small, so I'm gonna zoom it a little bit. I'm going to convert it convert to mesh, and then going also to set the origin to geometry so it's in the center. I will then put my object in the center, and then I'll scale it a little bit more. Now, once you have your shape, sometimes if it's not designed clean enough, you may find some. So if I go in edit mode, I can clearly see that there are multiple vertices, and probably we don't need them all. But the main problem would be all these ones that are in a straight line, and they are not adding anything to the shape of the object. So what's happened when I try to add the modifier is this, spikes everywhere. And the reason, if you go in edit mode, you can see it's because there are too many information here where we really don't need. So to fix this, there are two ways. One is the manual way. So actually I see that this shape, if I go from the top, it's basically in a straight line from here to here. So I can select all of this and just remove them. Nothing changed, but now it's clean. So this is one way, but you can also, I undo now to go back, I can also select edges, for example. I select all of them, and then I can hit delete on the keyboard and then do limited dissolve, and we'll remove anything that is not useful for the shape. So this way you can clean up the shape when you have this kind of weird glitches going on. So as we imported this, actually we make it a bit less thick, something like that. And I'm going to rotate that, I press X and then 90 and enter, and that's now facing the 3D space. I press then G, I press Z, and I move it above the grid. Okay, so I have my object here. You may see that here I see all the faces, and actually I want this to look more smooth. I can select the whole object, right click and I can say shade smooth. And it's not what I wanted, because it's actually smoothing all the way through, both the sides and the front. So one easy way to do it, it's going here. Sorry, it's going here in the object data properties, click on normals and click on auto smooth. Okay, so the difference is between flat shading, I zoom in so you can see that better, flat shading or smooth shading. But without this activated, it will smooth everywhere. If I activate this and I'll set an angle that the standard is 30, means that we'll only auto smooth anything below that angle. So if I increase this to 90, everything will be smooth. As I decrease, you can see that, look here for example, and then if I go even lower, the faces will start appear again. So depending on your geometry, you may want to excuse me, you may want to decide what kind of smooth level to use. The standard one is 30. I will keep it 30 because it's actually, I like the fact that I see each single curve, but they are divided. While the angle between the sides and the front, it's actually 90. So if I want this to be smooth, this one should go above 90, or 90 and above. Let's go back. We're gonna talk about what are normals in a different lesson. I want today just to show you really get into something interesting like animation. How can I animate my scene? And that's why I'm keeping an object like this cloud, for example. The color, it's okay, but we're going through the shading again, so I can show you some differences. Oops, sorry. I'm using a new mouse actually, and I'm not used to this. It's a vertical mouse and it's weird. So right now I have no nodes. I have to, the standard material is this SVG matte. We call it cloud material or cloud shiny. We click on use nodes, and now I have this. I'm going to the preview of the material. So this is really how my material is going to look like. I choose an environment just to animate. This is not the final environment, but it's something to have a preview of what I'm doing. Okay, I like it. There is the sun clearly on the side and the other part is in the shade. And now I can make it, for example, a quick thing is to make it metallic. And reduce the roughness so I can see some reflection in it. Okay, there is some reflections, it's not too strong, so it doesn't distract. If I remove all the roughness, you will see everything around. So I'll bring it back so we have some movements. It looks metallic, but it's not too strong. As you can see, the color of a metallic object, it's important for the reflections, but when it's completely reflective, you will see the light, the color it is. So if I change this to red, still the bright parts are gonna stay the same color. And the closest to a gray, the closest to a neutral with non-saturation, the closest to the original color. Don't forget that the metallic material will change the color of the reflected objects. So if I go with the red, everything reflected is on the shade of red, while if it wasn't metallic, everything reflected, it's the right color. It's less reflective. Hello Techno, welcome. It's less reflective, but everything reflected keeps more the original color. You can see on the side, it's probably clear that now it's mixing the blue of the sky with the red of the object, and it becomes purple. Anyway, let's go back. This is really, you can experiment with this kind of color. So we have our metallic and slightly rough object. And let's see how to quickly animate this. Now we'll need to activate the timeline again. We have here our frame from 1 to 250. If you want to change the size of the timeline, you can change it from here. You can change it from here. And don't forget to use the frame per second you're going to use in your final animation. Excuse me. Mainly because if you animate in 25 frames per second and your animation is going to be 50, you will have to stretch your animation, and you will have some kind of steps in between frames. So it's important to set this from the beginning. Let's set it to 25 in this part of the world. Hello Techno. We are not going to use animation nodes today. This is a very first step animation video, and we're going to talk about keyframes and moving objects in the scene, and animate channels in general. So the animation nodes, it's actually very advanced for this lesson. We are going to introduce animation nodes later in the course. The only thing is that Blender is changing. So to explain to everyone, animation nodes, it's an add-on that enable to model and do operation through nodes. So not just using modifiers or using destructive tools, but using nodes. So you can add multiple objects, you can change parameters of the object, all through the nodes system, like the shading system. Reality is that in the next few versions of Blender, they will introduce something called everything node, which will be exactly what it sounds like. Each single object, each single tool, each single setting will be editable as a node, and this will open really infinite possibilities. So I will leave animation nodes add-on at the end of this course. There are also other add-ons to speed up animation, but right now we focus on a classic concept of animation. So keyframes, using the graph editor and moving in the interface. So once you set your frame per second, don't worry about the resolution. This is the same you use for a still frame or the final animation, but at the moment we only care to animate in the viewport. We're not talking about the export of the animation. So you move this with a click, of course, is the cursor in the timeline, and you can hit anytime spacebar and we'll start the animation, hit spacebar and we'll stop. Don't forget to go back. And the first animation I'm going to show you, it's just move this object from one side to another. Let's say that the cloud will go from left to right. So we select the object. We can, in different way, we can insert a keyframe. Okay, so we can right click here and insert keyframe. We can press I on the keyboard and we'll present you with a number of keyframe that you can insert. In our case, it's going to be location. I'm not going to I'm not gonna click it yet. Another way, if you want to animate the position, it's going here and right click and insert keyframe. So as you can see, there are multiple ways to animate, to add keyframe. And well, we start with the easiest one, which is going here and insert keyframe. So the only thing you can do is insert keyframe. And this becomes yellow, that means there is a keyframe. Here you can see the properties animated. That's what this is saying, this square. And here you can see there is one keyframe. As in many other software, it works in the same way. Then you move your cursor to wherever you want, let's say 75. Now you move the object. Let's move it on the x-axis. And now you can see this becomes orange. That means this is not the same value of the last keyframe. So the last keyframe was in a different position. So what we can do, it's actually insert keyframe again. And now we have these two keyframes. If I move the cursor, this is exactly what happens. We have our cloud moving back and forth. It's fast enough, the refresh. And let's say that then we want this to go back to that position. So we move again to 150. And this time I show you another way to insert keyframe. Once you have the first keyframe, if you click on the auto keying button, this will become blue. It's very important you keep an eye on that. So let's say that you are in this position, 75, and then you move 150. Auto keying means that wherever you are in the timeline, if you move an object, it will automatically add a keyframe in the position you move it, or rotate or scale. So again, I press G, I press X, and I move it here. I release, and you can see now it's created a keyframe automatically. Okay, so now we created this kind of movement here. Before showing you this ease out and ease in, because this can be edited in a different editor, and I don't want to scare you too much, we're going to see how to edit other parameters. It's a very similar way. So of course, if you want to rotate an object, let's say that here it's like this, and here we'll go 75, and we say, well, here I want the, oops, not this one, but we want this to face the other way, so 180. As I have this selected, it will automatically update the keyframe. So now I have this effect. Also, if you don't have this, let's say that I want to add another keyframe here. So I go in this position, I say, well, here I want actually this to go up. And I go up, oh, not with this, but with this. And then I move. It will go back to the position, because if I don't save the keyframe, whatever I do, it's completely ignored. So reactivate this, and let's change this by hand. And let's change this. Okay, now it's 180 all the way through. I want this to be different. Now you can see that it's changing color, and the reality is that we didn't add any keyframe there for the rotation. These are green, so there's no keyframe. So I need to add the keyframe here and here. So now if I go here 180, okay. So it's important, as you have a lot of parameters, that you animate one parameter at a time. In theory, you can do this all visually without entering any number, but you need to make sure that you really know what you're doing. So the first time, probably you want to have everything visible to know what's happening. Otherwise, let's remove the keyframe. I select them and just delete keyframe. First of all, you will stay in the position of the keyframe, of the frame you were in that moment. Let's put it in the center again. Let's put it 0. No, that's okay. This one 0. So in theory, I can go here with this activated. I can say, okay, insert keyframe. Sorry, I'm going the first frame, and I insert keyframe. And it's not inserting any keyframe. Let's add a keyframe for location, for example. Then I press this, then I move here, and then I move this here, and then I move here. So of course it's gonna work. But then if you don't have anything inside and you want to start adding rotation here, it's not really doing what I want. I want this to start normally. So I need to add the keyframe manually. Here it needs to be. So what I'm trying to say is that you really know before you start what is going to be your animation like. If you're animating the rotation, you want always to start inserting a keyframe in the rotation. If you know that the object is just gonna move, well, just don't care about the rotation, don't add the keyframe in the rotation, because it's gonna just add more data to your scene and it's gonna be useless. Let's say that you have two different clouds, one here, and then I duplicate and I add another one here. Yeah, let's move it a little bit. And I want these two clouds to move in two different positions, so in the opposite position. So I know already that what I'm gonna do is going to be now I had this activated, and this is what happens when you have this activated. Let's copy the object without having the auto keyframe activated. Okay, so we have these two objects. Now there are no keyframes here, no keyframe there. First thing you want to do is insert keyframe for both in the channel you want to animate. So location this one, and location this one too. And then I'm going to move to 70. And if I have this activated, I can move this on the side and move this on the other. Okay, now I have this effect here. If I want to animate also the rotation, I would do exactly the same thing. So I would go to each single object, I would add a keyframe in the rotation, add the keyframe in the rotation, then I move to the same keyframe here, and I will rotate again while this is activated. So it's not this one. you can clearly see the movement now. Let's do the same operation but in 2D, because it's important that you understand that it works exactly in the same way in 2D. Even if you are in a 3D environment, it will work exactly with the same tool. So we rotate this object back to what it was. You see it's not completely flat, so we want to flatten the rotation too. And we go from the top. Now our cloud is reflecting whatever is on the top of the environment, so don't care about the color. We are gonna adjust the color only when we need it, which is before the rendering. And here we do exactly the same. Let's say rotation, let's say rotation, and let's say also scaling. Okay. Set the first frame. Let's go to 70 or to whatever you want to move. We can move it there. We can rotate the cloud a little bit. We can scale it. And then we can move here and we can scale it down, maybe. We can rotate even more, the other side. And now you have the interpolation. So these are the very, very simple animation. It's important you understand that all the modification done here as it was when you were editing the object. If you go in 3D, it's exactly the same, just happening on two planes, or sorry, on one plane, on 2 dimensions. Okay, it should be quite intuitive till this moment. So I'm going to remove this, which is really, really basic animation, and I'll show you something different, which is the camera. We don't have any camera in our scene because we remove the camera every time we start, but now it's the moment where you can start understanding the camera, because you need the camera to, when you do a video, we're not designing for some other output, we're gonna do a video, so we need a camera that will mimic what's gonna be in the final video. So we have the camera, and the first thing you want to do is click on the camera icon, and this is what the camera sees. So this is not what we want. If we press with the middle mouse button and we move, this is what's gonna happen. So we will see the camera. That's not what we want. We want to change the view from the camera to be exactly the final view. So we click on the camera here, then you want to go into view and lock the camera to view. So now whatever is happening in this space, it's whatever is going to happen in the final video. And here is our object. It's complicated, but no worries. We select the object. The first thing I would do is selecting the object and press, well, I don't know actually where is on Mac, but on a computer, on a let me see if there is another way to show you this. Yes, frame selected. On a PC, it's the numeric pad. It's the comma or dot on the numeric pad. But if you don't have it, you can go from here, frame selected, and you will be presented with this. At this point, you can rotate the scene, and it's not perfect. So there is a shortcut to get the view at first glance, but you need to know how to move it in this view. So I'm going to show you the view manually, how to make this the right view manually. Let's say that you want to work in 2D. So we can select the camera here in the outliner, and we say, well, first of all, it's not perspective. We need an orthographic camera because the 2D we were doing were orthographic, you may choose a different view. That's up to the style you want to achieve. But to mimic what we've seen before, we go to orthographic. Okay. And now, as you can see, I cannot move it anymore because the orthographic has no perspective. What we can do, it's actually changing the scale of it. If I zoom just to have more space around. Then I click here and it's all over the place. I need actually the camera to just look down, so there's no rotation that I need. And this is gonna be 0. And then with shift, I'm just moving around the scene. So, okay, let's say that we have the camera. Now we have the camera set and we have our cloud. And this is gonna be, if I render now the video, it's gonna be exactly what I see. So it's important you know that you are in a camera and you are not just in a view. You can also see the camera now. What is the camera like? And if you have two views, let's say that you open another view. And this view can be the camera, and this view can be the other one. So if you need to move objects around, you may have multiple views depending on what you want to do. And as the camera is an object, it's an entity itself, I can move it as any other object. Why nothing is changing here? Because it's orthographic. In an orthographic projection, the objects don't change dimension depending on the distance from the camera. What they change, it's actually position. So I can move the camera around. If the camera would be just a normal perspective camera, you can see first of all that has changed shape. And that means also that I can move the camera. I don't know if you can see this properly, but if I move the camera, let's make the camera bigger, just the icon of the camera bigger so it's clear. So in viewport you can choose the size of the camera. This is just visualization. This is nothing that's gonna be rendered here. It's just an icon to show you the camera is pointing up there. It's the shape of the view from the camera. So if I select this, I can move it like this, but I can also move it far and close, which is a classic movement of camera. Other things that I can do if I'm in a perspective view, it's changing the focal length, while in an orthographic view I cannot do it. In an orthographic view, everything is parallel, so there's no sense of depth. My suggestion, most of the time, if you want to do something that looks 2D, but it's not exactly 2D because you want to add something and this platform allows you to do something else, it's actually go with a perspective camera and then pick a millimeter above, I would say 90 or 100. So in theory, the perspective is not in theory, the perspective is not, you don't see the sides of the object, but if you, oh sorry, I went to the wrong side. But if you rotate slightly, you can see some depth. So when you have objects moving close to you, for example, let's go back to the same where we were before. let's say that we have this object. I'll move it from the other screen so you can see that better. I have this object moving closer to the camera, and on the side you see this. This is something that with an orthographic view you cannot see, because you never see the third dimension. And yes, Sam, that's exactly the point I'm showing you the camera. It's because you can animate moving objects and the objects will move on their own, or you can animate the camera. So if you have a static scene, you can have the camera moving around. And I'm going to show you the easiest way to do it. But it's quite intuitive again. Let's say that we have our cloud. Let's put it back where it was, and let's put the camera on. Let me divide the screen in a different way so that it's better. We don't need this, probably. I don't need this one. This mouse, it's really weird. And I don't need that much. Okay, I don't need this, and this is gonna be our normal view. Okay, first of all, don't forget that if you lock the camera to the view, you're moving the camera. If you unlock, you're just moving what are you seeing in this scene. So I just zoom so it's a bit easier to understand what's going on. And let's say that we have this cloud here. Let's move the camera a bit farther, and let's add another couple of clouds. Okay, one here, one there, one there. And there, I also want them to be, I select them all, I duplicate, so I have more here. And then I move some of them out of the way, so there's not, they're not too aligned. You can add something here too. Okay, let's say that this is our scene, initial scene. And I can actually add even more on top or on the bottom. And straight there. So now I'll show you the two different effects. If the camera would be orthographic, I would see this, because I don't see any depth in the scene. And if I zoom in, nothing will change. While if I have a perspective camera, which is a normal camera, I would say, and I move the camera down, I have this sense of movement. Let's move some cloud out of the way so we can then go through the clouds. And let's move the camera down. And then move the last one a bit on the left. Okay, now I created a space. And while the camera goes in between them, you can see the size of the clouds. And how to animate this movement? Well, it's quite easy. If you select the camera, we are moving only the location, so anything can be animated. Even the focal length can be animated, of course. So insert keyframe here. Then we go to 75. We move the camera down. Okay, and this wasn't enabled. If I enable this now, nothing will work. I have to insert my keyframe manually. So here, insert keyframe. And now, if I play the animation, or I just go with the cursor left and right, I have my camera movement. Now, if I change this to a wider focal length, let's say 35, for example, which means that the first keyframe must be much closer to have the same kind of result. And now, as I move, I even have more sense of depth. Does it make sense what I'm doing till now? What I'm gonna do, just to make this like something that looks like more real in a way, not real, but that looks more like an illustration. We go back to the shader editor, we select our object. This is a cloud, let's make it as a cloud, so white. And it's not metallic because clouds are not metallic. Now they look like clouds. Some parts are more bright and some parts are in the shadow. I can rotate probably my HDRI until I have what I want. Don't forget that we started this animation facing down for other reason, but in theory, to have everything in order, you should have the animation the other way. So I started with the 2D animation, and now I'm changing to 2.5 or 3D at this point animation. But when you are planned to do a 3D animation, you should have everything rotated by 90 degrees, so it will be on the plane. Yes, that's a dolly. There are actually many ways to create very complicated and even more creative than reality camera movements, and that's why I really like it, because you can create rig of any kind, rotation and skeletons and anything you can imagine to do any camera movement you want and animate each single part of the camera. For example, if we can go let me finish with the material and then we go back to this. So right now we already have, let's open actually let's open no, I don't need this. Let's open here. I want to have both the timeline and this for the shader. So I'm gonna have my shaders here, and here I have the timeline always on. So okay, we can see what's going on. I also going to hide here everything that I don't need, because I just want to see the result. And also you see this area, they are called passepartout, and we can make it completely black, so we don't have any distraction at all. We select the camera, and it's in a viewport display, passepartout. You can remove it or you can make it completely black. So now nothing is, you don't see anything else apart from what is going to be in the scene. So let's say that it starts from here and it's very far. Let's go into animate actually the focal length. Insert a keyframe here. Remove this in place. The keyframes, you can pick the keyframes and move it right and left if you want to change the timing. I just realized that I set a keyframe on frame 0 instead of 1. Doesn't really matter, but I want to show you that you can amend it. So insert keyframe here and insert keyframe here. Now I know that the camera is on 35 millimeters all the way through, but I can change the beginning to something closer. That means that now while it, and that's exactly what I have to remember, to then keyframe again, and now you see that it's going through, but it's changing the millimeter too. On the right hand, end here, you can see that it's changing the millimeter, and we can do it even more extreme. So here maybe you want to have more clouds. Replace. When there is already a keyframe, you replace it. And now that's the effect. It's kind of a vertigo effect. So it's really up to you what you want to do as effect. Yeah, we're gonna see that in a moment. I'll finish with this, and then we're gonna quickly see something similar, very simple, something that can be done in 10 minutes. So let's add another object quickly, a plane. Scale the plane a lot and move it down so it's in the scene from the first frame, and I'm going to assign a new material, and I'm going to assign this as blue. Okay, so now we have a background, we have some clouds moving on. As the clouds are not moving, I'm gonna reuse the clouds to do what Sam asked. So let's remove our camera. We can do another one later. Let's select everything. Okay, everything is just the clouds and the plane. As you can see here, it's becoming a bit messy. What I would do is probably select all my clouds, right click, and I would move to collection, new collection, let's call it clouds. Okay, so right now I can close here and I don't have too many things going on. We can remove this, that there's nothing else anymore. We have our plane that we call it background. Now I can select everything and rotate everything on the X axis by 90 degrees. So now they are flat. And let's add more clouds to the scene. Forget for a moment the right view. I can select them all. I can go from the front actually. I move them here and I duplicate with Shift D. And then they're not really randomly placed. There are more ways to do this randomly to create more random cloud. I select some of them. I just selected a group of them, doesn't matter which one, it's like very casual. I press S and then make them smaller. So they go into the center a bit more, then I can move them around. This is really like, it's a very artistic or creative procedure, so it depends on what you want to do. There's no real rule here. It's your sensitivity. And let's create some, move some on the top. The other side. Okay, now we have some clouds there. That doesn't really matter for this example. So we have some cloud in the depth too. Let's create another plane. Scale it. I'm just scaling it. And I actually want to be very long, like this. I'm gonna assign a dark color, and it's gonna be rough for sure, so not much reflection. We have a very plain background. I'm gonna show you, if we have moment, how to do a different background here, but probably not in this lesson. And let's create some random cube that are gonna be our buildings. So let's go from the top so it's faster. One here, one there, one there, there, one there, one there, and then we can let's duplicate them all. So I select them, I'll duplicate them, I press S, then Z, so I can scale them up, and then I'll move them. Okay, it's not really a city, but you get what I'm doing. I really need to keep it simple so there are not too many things going on. And this one, move to collection, new collection, buildings. And actually I moved them to a collection. Now, if I change the color of one of these, it will change only on that color. Let's make it metallic and red. So I have to select the other object and add the new color that I didn't name. Let's call it building color. If I select multiple objects and I change it, nothing will happen. So you have to do it one by one. There are shortcuts, but the point is that when you duplicate an object, it will duplicate also the material. So if I remove this and I duplicate this, it will duplicate with the material. So again, when you are making your assets, you need to know what you're gonna do at the end. So let's create another few of them and then probably make them smaller. Okay, that's very, very simple, but it will just give us enough to work on. Now we create our camera. And the camera is gonna be there somewhere. It's very tiny, so we want to change the size so we can see that. You see it's pointing in the wrong direction. So we go here, we select the camera view, and then if you want to move the camera, you have to lock the camera to the view, or you can use to start with the parameters. So it's gonna be 990 and it's gonna be facing that wall, so it's gonna be 0. You can see here on the left it changed position in real time. So now let's move the camera there and then move the camera on the why, and that's what happened. So first thing I notice is that the background actually it's too short, so you want to scale the background a little bit, and maybe scale it this too. And then you have your very, very stylized city. I would say very, very stylized city. As this is a new camera, I need to change, of course, again, what I changed before, the Passepartout, for example. Now, within the material here, within this, we can add detail. Of course, there are many details that can be added and things that can be done much better than this. But the point was animating the camera. So let's animate the camera. Go here or here on the scene, I press I will animate the location, and in 70 frame I'm going to be here, for example, and even actually lower. And I press I, and again location, so I have the 2 keyframes. And on the right you can see the result. You just animated the camera. But let's animate also the rotation, why not? So it's facing there, while as it goes closer, I want to rotate the camera to look at the sky. Then I again, and rotation. And that's it. So this is a very, very simple animation. There are many things that can be done to make the animation more realistic, but this is very cartoon style animation, adding some depth to it. What I can show you, it's actually having shapes that don't have any depth, even if you move in the 3D space, because right now our scene is moving in the 3D space. Don't forget that you can combine the movement of the camera with the movement of the clouds or any other object in the scene. And yes, Sam, of course, you can create looping animation. You need to make sure that everything that it's in the next to last frame, it's exactly the same of the first frame, and yes, can be done. Actually, there is a guy that I follow. It's one of the superstar of YouTube doing tutorial. His name is Nathan, but his channel is Ducky3D, and he does these very futuristic neon beautiful loops. Mainly are used for music, that's my understanding, and that's exactly what you imagine. So it creates the animation in a way that the final part of the animation is exactly like the first one, and that can be looped forever. So the loop, it's actually it's not a real loop, it's just the animation is restarting, and it's restarting exactly in the same status of the first of the last frame, or the animation will finish exactly in the status of the first frame. Yeah, but that can be used for a background, for example, background of clouds. Yeah, I don't see why not. Clouds scrolling from left to right, for example, or anything, like even a city. Again, one of his most famous video, it's actually it's a retro kind of road with the mountains on the side and going towards the sun. It's beautiful, and it's a loop, so you can watch it forever. But it's only, I believe it's only a few seconds, the real animation, so everything is looped. I'll go quickly to show you a different effect here. Remember yesterday I showed you, and I'm going to do this again, that you can use RGB instead of a principal shader, and you will remove any kind of depth. Okay, so we can still have it white, but you're removing any kind of depth visualized. That the object is still has some kind of depth, but it's just not visualized anymore because all the sides are gonna be the same without any kind of shading. Same thing for the our buildings. Actually, I wanted even more. Now they are. I wanted them to be even more reflective. So, sorry, building, and I said if we use an RGB, we can use the same color, but this will remove any effect. So you will have a completely flat animation, which is very 2D, I would say. Let's go back here. Let's add this there. For example, here we may want actually the background not to be shaded, because here you can see that the background change slightly. Here is brighter, but we want just a color in the background, so we may want to use, if you want a flat color, we may use a RGB node. And now the background is always the same color. As I said, you can of course also animate other objects at the same time to have more a stronger animation effect. Let's change first of all this, so we can see how the scene will change radically depending on the environment. And then let's move the clouds. First of all, we can start rotating the cloud. Right now they are facing, but we can randomly rotate some of the cloud, so they're not perfect. Oops. And some of these. This again depends on your style you want to have, but this way there is some variation between the shades because they are facing different sides. Also, we're going to animate slightly that. So let's say that here we go from here. It's easier to select them all. I select them all. I go here and I'm going to animate the location of all of this. Of course, it's not showing me anything yet. Because the only object that gets animated is the first one that is selected, or the yellow one. So in a group, for example, nothing is selected until I select one manually. So now this one is selected and the other ones are part of the selection. So what I can do, as I was showing you quickly, let's select a few, well, let's select one by one. Probably the quickest way is to activate this, then go from the front view, or from here, let me see, let's go from here. And with this selected, because it's faster in this case, because there are multiple objects, and it creates a frame, and then it creates another frame. So let's say that all the clouds that we want to animate, they need an initial keyframe. Normally you do this when you have few objects. Right now I was showing you something else. So when you have multiple objects, that are a better way to do. There are like particle systems, there are smoke systems, there are multiple there are different ways to create something interesting. So let's go here. It's our last frame was 70. Probably we don't even need 70. And now I would start probably from the end. So I would select this cloud here and I will move it here. So I know that it's going to be in the scene. Now, can you see that cloud moving? And then let's go with this. And then I go back to here and move it there. Then maybe this one can arrive from the top. Now you see that the clouds start moving. I would only do this manually if I had 10 objects, no more than that. In our case was just showing you some sense of depth and how multiple objects can, if you are moving the camera, having multiple objects in different distance will give you a lot of animated feeling. And well, as we are here, I'm going to show you something different. I'm going to select every single cloud. I'm going to scale them, but not all together. I'm going to it's not this one. Let me remember. Thinking what's the fastest way to show you this effect. No, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna select them all. I'm going to move them all together out of the scene. And now here I can move them in different groups down in the scene. And now just remove the frame 0. And now you can see that the clouds are basically going down in my scene. The last thing before we go for today, it's showing you something else. So I will quit with this animation, we don't need it anymore. Show you a very simple animation from here. Again, let's activate this and then go insert keyframe here, and then we go to 80. Let's move it, and okay, and it's animated. As you can see, it starts slow, it accelerates, and then it slows down to the end. And that's mainly because the interpolation mode, it's a Bezier, and that means that it does, I'll show you in a graph what does it do. So if we go here into the graph editor, we select our object, and that's what's happening. It starts here, it increases slowly, then it goes at normal speed, and then it slows down again. Sometimes you need, especially when you do a loop, to answer to what we were saying before, if there is an acceleration and the slowing down, the loop won't be natural. You will see this this slowing down continuously, and the loop is not going to be smooth. So what you want actually, it's having this as a straight line, and you can do it in different way. You can do it from here, for example, or you can do it from you were before. So you select the points you want to edit, and then you do linear, and now you will see the difference. To see even better the difference, let's copy this on the side, and we'll change to the second one. So here you see all the objects selected, and only the objects selected. So I'll select the second one, and I'll make it linear. I just animated also the wrong. Now what's happened is exactly the error that I said to you, keep an eye on it. I copied an object while I was auto keying, so I made a mess. So just remove this. Now copy. And of course, I cannot do this like that because everything is keyed in that position. What I need to do in this case, it's actually getting more complicated than I thought, it's removing the keying of what I don't need. I don't need any keyframe on the Y, so I'll delete keyframe, single keyframe on the Y, and I'll delete single keyframe on the Y here too. I'm gonna do the same thing at the other one. Delete single keyframe. Okay, now it's not animating the Y, so I can move it in the Y, and it will be my copy. So when you copy an object, you are copying the whole keyframe set. So we'll go to the graph editor, and you can see the animation, it's accelerating and going and slowing down. Linear, and now we can see one next to the other the difference in behavior. They reach the final point at the same speed, but one is smoother movement while the other one is constant. And it's not a big problem when it's only one movement or when you do something that goes straight or very fast. But let's say that after this point you add another movement, let's say up. Let's go up. Okay, insert keyframe, and then let's see how much up, 7. And then this one, insert keyframe. So this one is going to use a Bayesian interpolation, and the other one is going to use all linear interpolation. Now let's see what's happened. Okay, so it's two different behaviors. I would say that normally there's nothing that will really move without any slowing down or acceleration. Anything organic will move with some sort of deceleration and acceleration. So unless it's something very robotic you want to achieve, you will always want some smooth movement instead of linear movements. Anything can be changed in every moment from linear to Bezier, so it's really not a big deal when you start animating. If you know what you're doing, it's better because you just save time at the end of the day. That's all. Just to finish, really, it's the end of today and it's the end of the week. We're going to animate something else. Let's open a viewport here. Let's move our camera. We don't need a camera. Let's assign two different material. Then select the other object. We create a new material. Let's call it blue this time. The first one was called red. So this one is called blue. And we have our timeline here. Now, as you can see, we can add a keyframe even in this channel. So we're gonna insert a keyframe for the red one here, and then once you reach this point, nothing changed, but once it reached this point, which is the end one, it's gonna be yellow. While the other one, go to the first keyframe, same thing, actually not same thing, we're going to animate the metallic, and once we're here it's going to be completely metallic. Okay, so to add the keyframe here. And I forgot to add the keyframe here for this one. Insert keyframe, replace keyframe. Okay, so it starts from non-metallic and it finishes metallic. You don't see much difference here because it's rough, but if we remove the roughness, you can see that it starts from this value. You can watch here the behavior, so it's probably more clear, and the behavior increase. So one is changing color and the other one is changing a parameter, a setting of the material. And we can go on with this animating. We can add, for example, a bevel, and we can make it smooth so it's shiny and it's clear what's happening. And we're gonna add few of these. We're gonna change the offset of the bevel, so we'll start from this. Insert keyframe, again I move it too far, and then by the end the offset, it's very high, so it looks like a sphere almost, and insert keyframe. And now we have this effect. So it's changing material, it's changing position, it's changing modifier, and you can change any single channel that is non-destructive in Blender. So guys, do you have any question, or I'm going to send you to have a terrific weekend, even if here the sky is kind of gray. I'll wait for you to tell me what you think about today, and if you have any questions about this. There's a lot going on, I understand that. Okay, I see no questions coming on, so thank you so much for watching today. Oh, wait. So it's possible to create huge sets, or would it be more plausible to create one set, cut in the edit into the next set? You can do both. You can do both. It depends on what makes it easier for you. So a huge scene, if you can, I would say that probably if it's the same environment, if it's not too big, I would just move the camera. But keep in mind that everything that is not in view, even if it's not rendered, is still in the memory. So when you are going to render whatever you're doing, you want to optimize for what it's in the scene only, what's in view only. So in theory, yes, you can build a planet and then moving the camera around, but then your computer needs to handle the planet while you only need to visualize a portion of it. It's a bit different from when you do real time or VR. If you do an object for VR, the object needs to be, or the environment needs to be always available, because the viewer may turn his head, so the object may be, they need to be there. While if you know that you're doing an animation for rendering, you know already what's gonna be in the scene, so you really don't care about everything that is not in the scene. You can do with multiple cameras, where each single camera does a different path. For example, you can add as many cameras as you want. But yeah, it doesn't make much difference. Conceptually, it's the same thing. But yeah, exactly. I would only create objects that are gonna be seen in the camera. Otherwise, it's really a waste of time. As I said, the technology is the same you use to do games, for example. But in that case, you build everything because the player moves around. While in this case, you do a render at the end of the day, and you only need to create what you need. So it's all like, it's more like the difference between theater or cinema, or an experience in real life where you can move around. Great. I'm going to stop the video and I'll see you next time. Have a great weekend and thank you so much again for today. Ciao, ciao.